Hello, everyone. This is George. I'm the CISO at Trustero, and we continue with our fireside chats with visionaries and CISOs in the AI and security space. Today, we have Bil Harmer and Paolo. Paolo is our resident solution engineer. He has an extensive background in security and audit. But let's start with Bil. Would you introduce yourself?
Sure, happy to. Thanks for having me. My name is Bil Harmer. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Killswitch Advisory. I'm the former CISO for Zscaler North America. I am the former head of security for SuccessFactors, the global division of SAP. Been in the industry for 27 years, been in IT for 30. Most recently, I was an operating partner and CISO for Craft Ventures.
Thank you, Bill. Really impressive, and we're so happy to have you. Paulo, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, Paolo Marquez. As George alluded to, I'm the solutions engineer here for Trustero. Also, the GRC lead that helps customers to get their success with regards to using Trustero AI for GRC. Before Trustero, I've been in the industry for about 15 years, 10 of which was with professional service firms like Deloitte, RSM, Grant Thornton, and then 5 years with companies like Cisco, Rivian, and then
Thank you, Paulo. And I can say it's delightful to have you on board. You've been with us for only a few months, but I love working with you. It's amazing. Bill, let's start with the big picture. You've been in the space for 30 years, maybe more. People are familiar with your work in identity management and lately around quantum computing and AI. Let's start with AI. AI came out probably 4 or 5 years ago, but it's already changing pretty much everything, including how we think about security and security strategy. What do you think is going to change how we CISOs operate? What is going to be the effect on our operations, on our organizational structure, how we work with other organizations?
Okay, so we're definitely starting with the small questions first. Yeah, so when you look at it, currently you're looking at about 77% of enterprise organizations out there today are either actively using AI tools in their operations or investigating the use of them. That's a technology that, as you said, 4 years ago wasn't considered viable. So we have exponential growth, exponential advancement in the technology. And I would challenge you to find any security tool out there that doesn't have AI in it somewhere. Now, the cyber world, the security world, we have been using machine learning for a decade easily. Anything that you ever saw back in the days of sandboxing, behavioral analytics, that's all machine learning in the background. So it's not terribly new. It's the generative AI that is actually the new piece that's coming out. And what we're finding, I think, is such an appetite and such an adoption rate that we haven't quite figured out how to secure it. And it's not only being used in the organization, but it's also being used in the tools as well. What it will do, I believe, when it's more solidified and operating well, it will create an ability to maintain a risk posture irrespective of the personnel wrapped around it. And what I mean by that is, if I'm CISO for company ABC and I build a program and I run it for 4 years, lifespan of a CISO. Actually, I think lifespan of a CISO now is 2, but let's say 4 for fun. I run it for 4 years and I do well and I have 0 breaches and maintain the risk posture of the company per the direction by the board. And then I decide, I'm going to go on to a new challenge. I'm going to do a startup. I get hit by a bus, whatever it is. And the executive team take a look at my history, my education, and they go hire somebody that is just like Bill. That has changed the security posture of the organization because you cannot replicate Bill himself. You can only sort of get Bill-like. Exactly. The knowledge, the experience, the emotional attachment in some cases, how I handle stress versus how somebody else handles stress. It's really hard to put a quantifier on that. So you're changing it. But if you had an AI that was being used to manage the risk at the direction of Bill, and it could understand more of the nuanced decision making as I made decisions, the questions of why, what led to that, And, this gets a little fanciful, but if it really understood everything about me, i.e., it talked to my AI and knew that I was having a bad day when I made a bad decision, or I was having a good day when I made a bad decision. Those types of things could be brought in and understood so that when the next person comes along and says, okay, I'm going to try and do what Bill did, or I'm going to do something completely different, that inherent knowledge stays there. Like, it's not just reading through old emails and some wiki docs to try and figure out what happened. It is truly at more core decision, understanding the whys. So I think that's where we're going to be headed to.
This is really interesting because one of the challenges, and not only security organizations, but organizations in general, is the ramp-up time for people who join. Usually you need at least 3 to 6 months for the person to understand the organization, understand the risk profile, and understand the risk appetite, because that's really important. I mean, I wouldn't trust somebody coming from the street to make decisions right away. They have to understand the culture, they have to understand how we approach risk and all those kind of things. And what you're saying is by using AI, we're going to maintain this consistency going forward, even if we change the leadership.
I would think so. And on top of it, I would go one further as well, in that the AI could bring an understanding of the rest of the organization. If you don't understand how your company makes money, right? Translation, what can your company survive? You can't protect it. And we've got a lot of CISOs, and for a long time, the CISOs would be out there implementing security tools to achieve a SOC 2, a HIPAA, some sort of governance framework that was either self-imposed or regulatorily imposed. When the truth is, they should be looking at what can they survive and how do they make money? Because our jobs, anybody who works for a company, their job is to simply help the company make more money. So I don't know if you've ever spoken to Steve Lewinsky, but he will tell you he's there to help sell more jeans when he was at Levi's. And that is an amazing analogy, because that's what we do. When I was at Kraft, I was there to do more deals. How do we safely do more deals? And in our particular case, protect that investment. So I would offer vCISO services to portfolio companies. Why? Because we had invested money in them and we did not want them to fail at their attempt because of a security incident. They may fail at their attempt because the market doesn't sustain the choice they've made. And that's part of the game of startups, of investing and trying to find them. We'd like them all to be unicorns, but it's not the truth. But we don't want them to fail because of a security issue or maybe even a bad hire. So those are the things that we would do. We would help hire people. We would do security reviews for them, that type of thing. So I think once we get more into that understanding, I don't know if you've ever seen or heard me say this, but I say it a lot. I think the CISO title should go away. I think it should be about risk, and we need to stop focusing on information security and start focusing on risk to the company.
I love that. And I'm completely 100% in alignment with you, because it's kind of interesting that we're getting a lot of compliance and forgetting that it's all about risk. Compliance is a tool to manage risk, but it's not the end of all. Actually, we were talking about a month ago, there is this proliferation of tools that allow you to achieve SOC 2 in 3 months or ISO 27001 in six months or something like that, which is great because in a lot of small companies, this is amazing. They don't have any program. So getting them to that level, even because of compliance, it's welcome news. So long as there is an understanding that this is not the end. This is the first step in a longer journey that ultimately has to lead to what you're saying, risk management, manage cyber risk. Which kind of leads me to my next question. There is this proliferation of frameworks. Like, just pick 3 letters and you can combine them into any kind of security frameworks out there. That proliferation creates a lot of stress, let's be honest, for the security team, because you have to manage ISO this, ISO that, SOC 2, then NIST CSF and all those kind of things. And there's this onslaught of 3, 4, 5 letters frameworks that we have to manage. Now, a lot of them come from people who really sat down and thought deeply about the problem. They request information, those kind of things. But none of them is really tailored to our organization. Inevitably, we have some things that we do that may not be for us. So do you think this is an area where AI can help? And what do you think is the future of all these frameworks?
I think I like frameworks because it gives you a starting point. If you achieve a SOC 2, an ISO, whatever, pick it, that's the floor. That is the bare minimum to not go to jail, is sort of how I look at it. And you should be stepping off from there. You should be going up. That should be the starting point, not the end. Unfortunately, so many people think it's the end, right? It's hey, we got it, we've achieved it. Let's go on to something more fun and exciting. And like, for instance, ISO. I built a security program at SuccessFactors, and I was told to my face repeatedly that we would never sell an HR solution run by an American SaaS company in Germany without an ISO certification. My answer was, watch me. And I did, because what I did was I went through ISO, and I have nothing against ISO, especially if you are building an airplane or making drugs. I want absolute rigor on everything, including when you go to the bathroom. Like, I want everything documented, because I need to know when something goes horribly wrong, because it is catastrophic with the failures. When you build software, 9 times out of 10, the mistakes are not catastrophic. They're not life-threatening. And so when you go through ISO, you can pull a whole bunch of really good pieces out of ISO and not achieve an ISO certification, because there's some things in there that are more perfunctory and more around meeting minutes and things like that are just time-consuming and costly to a software company. And you can combine those with other things for your business and your customers. And that's exactly what I did. Like, I ended up with a 400-page audit report that took things like Siemens doing an audit, and they used to do an audit on site every year, 10 days in California. And I reduced that to a 45-minute phone call because I put such transparency in what I did. And I think AI will help us analyze data. I think it could be the end of certifications if it's done correctly. And what I mean by that is, I do believe that we will get to the point of true agentic AI. That would be world models with scenario modeling and computer imagination behind it to figure out what possibilities are out there, and then agents acting based on decisions come out of those models. And part of that will be my agent or agents will go query and or speak to the agents at all of my vendors. And it will pull information from those vendors so that I can continuously, at a near real time ability, monitor my security posture. Because I don't care if you pass SOC 2, Sarbanes-Oxley. I just don't care. I really don't. The reason I look at them is to understand, have you done the basics? And are you consistent in your approach? Because that's what security, and that's truly what trust is. Trust is just repeatability over a period of time. So what I want to see is, I want to know when I'm looking at something in the industry, am I affected, right? CrowdStrike does something with a patch and has a problem with, a couple of million of their endpoints. I wasn't a CrowdStrike user, doesn't make a difference to me. I was taking a flight that day, so it did make a difference. So there was an impact, right? So, and that kind of larger gap impact is more what I'd be interested in, because, you could scenario it out at the time and say, okay, well, CrowdStrike did this. They're going to lose some market share because people are going to go buy SentinelOne or something else. And because of that, they're going to lay off some people. And if they lay off people, they're going to have less customer service. So they're not going to do as many feature upgrades. And you could see a potential scenario of a trickle down. Or you could have the scenario that played out, which is their stock would go down to 180 and then bounce back up to 400 and something. And I should have bought it at the dip. Like, there's all these different things that could happen. But people, I don't think there's any one person out there that can figure all of this stuff out and be able to do the analysis of such vast quantities of data. And that's where I think the AI comes in, so that it does take us to a point of having much better governance, much better risk analysis, and much better control over what we are doing, versus once a year, I'm going to do something, and then we're going to put it all together in a report and hand it to somebody who's not really going to read it. I'm a little sad about this, because I put a lot of work into the original audits that I did under the SAS 70 framework. And a lot of that work went into, if you look at what a SOC 2 audit is today, it's a near copy of what I was doing back in the late 2000s. But for it to go away would not be a bad thing if I could have true risk analysis being done on the posture of the myriad of vendors that I have.
So I think that a lot of the certifications with regards to trust, security, and privacy will definitely evolve over the coming years. And to your point, AI and quantum computing will have a role in that. So do you feel that as far as proving to the community, hey, I am trustworthy, I am a secure company, and I respect your privacy, in order to prove that to the community, is the certifications going to evolve to something like a 42 ISO 42001 or something else? Or is it more near real time like what you're saying? So if I'm a customer of yours, am I gonna be able to self-serve, right? Like if I want to prove that, hey, your systems are protected from breaches, can I do some self-service work using AI to prove that your systems are indeed trustworthy? What's your take on that one, Bill?
I think like if you look at any retail organization that's been breached, every one of them had PCI compliance. So I put no stock in anybody achieving still maintaining what I would euphemistically call trust. Um, I would much prefer trust, like I said, is repetition over time, which means I'm going to be your customer over time and I'm going to verify and verify and verify. I'll never stop verifying, but I'll never stop. Because the second I stop is when something blows up or things at once. Right now, it's literally, at best we can go to a trust portal, look at the trust portal. Maybe we can write a script, or we've got we've got something that could pull an API that will then pull the status, and then I'm going to get into scripted understanding, meaning, it's just a bunch of gates of some sort that will go through. It's truly the artificial intelligence that can consume the data at scale and help make decisions based on our guidance. When you throw that onto a quantum computer, I mean, at that point, theoretically, you can do every scenario model at once in time. And I think that's a whole game changer right there. I'm not sure whether I'm super excited or terrified when an AI model runs on a quantum computer. I really want to see it. Like, really do.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about quantum computing, but what I do know about it lends itself to that world model scenarioing, to a point where it either that I think is the AI doomsday kind of thing. That's the Skynet potential. I think, I said during my talk that I did, Skynet was simply model drift, which is a horrific thing to think. Like, it still had the same goal. It would have to, I think, run on quantum at that point.
So that's actually an interesting point. I love what you're saying about the certificates. It's almost like we want to see a risk report, not a certificate from an audit around the company.
Mm-hmm.
And using AI, I'm thinking about this example around FedRAMP, for example. FedRAMP is pushing companies to do continuous control monitoring. And there are some other frameworks that are going in that direction. And we know that continuous control monitoring is a really good thing. The problem is that we don't have resources to do it.
Right.
I don't have enough people and I don't have enough money to do it. However, if I use AI agents, that kind of democratizes this type of approaches and it's going to get us there.
Yes.
However, in today's organization, we have complexity, and that is part of the problem. It's very complex, and that's why we need a lot of resources to understand the risk and to properly manage the risk. Let's say we employ AI agents to almost like create this abstraction layer between us and the complexity of the organization. So this complexity will continue to build. Do you think we're going to kind of hide versus solving, or at least attempting to solve the problem? Maybe there are going to be so much risks that AI itself will be able to cope with, but we won't even understand what AI is telling us.
Yeah, well, there you're hitting on probably one of the future fears of artificial intelligence, and it's the loss of the skill set to the AI. I think we have made them more complex as we brought more and more systems in, brought more and more technologies in. You go back to the mid 80s when it was maybe a mainframe and maybe only 10% of the employee populations was utilizing it, everything else was paper. You still had complexity in that. you still had challenges, and we sort of overcame some of those challenges by giving everybody PCs or dumb terminals or access to information, digitizing everything so it was centralized, but then we created other problems around it. And I think we mature and evolve in business, we will continually push some risks or some complexity to the background and bring new ones in. I think right now, because we're seeing that sort of Moore's law, doubling of processing power, the compute idea, the hockey stick that's happening really with artificial intelligence, which will bring, I guess, more advanced solutions to less advanced organizations. That's a democratic way to put it. We're going to find new problems, and those new problems are going to be buried inside technology. I'll give you a good example. I build cars, right? I build hot rods and stuff like that. And I can go in, I can lift the hood and pull a carburetor off and rejet it because I know there's a problem. If I lift the hood on like an Audi TT RS, I don't even know what's under there. Like, I think the motor's in there. I'm not sure because it doesn't look like a motor anymore, but I could almost kind of work my way through it because there was consistency. And now you get an electric vehicle with a problem. I literally had, like, my wife's electric, she had a little Smart for 2 car that had problems. And the only thing I could do was put it on a tow truck and send it to the dealer, right? So
It's a computer that you don't even have access to.
exactly. We're getting farther and farther away, even though it's still the same device, right? It's still a big box with 4 wheels. It drives me around, or it did when it worked. So yeah, I think we will continue to move the needle on where the problems are, what the complexity is. I think we're going to lose skill sets, but we'll gain new ones, right? We'll be able to understand and talk to our AI better. We may not understand the code it spits out, and that'll be probably something that, older people like us who used to write code will be able to come back in and be the Y2Ks of the code disaster
The
of
COBOL
the future.
programmers, yeah.
Oh, God, yes. The COBOL and JCL, that's PTSD for me.
So, but that creates a slightly interesting problem that we used to have. It's kind of in a different way. If you recall, when the cloud came in, a big thing was shadow IT, because everybody can put it on a credit card and start using services. Now, with the AI, it becomes almost like citizen development, like everybody's becoming a developer, especially with the tools that are out there. That I can see creating a lot of headaches for the security organization. So what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. So shadow AI is a raging nightmare simply because every free tool that your organization uses has it. Every employee has it somewhere. And at least, like you said, in the old days, you could go through your account
And hopefully catch someone.
Well, yeah, you go through accounts payable and run a report on recurring expenses that were under other or whatever that needed no receipt, and sort of have an idea where this stuff was. I think as these tools come out now, I'm going to date myself again, but if you remember back in the days of IBM with Lotus Notes, they created the citizen developer. I was at Manulife Financial, and I was responsible for Lotus Notes. And we had 19,000 employees, and I think we had 38,000 different applications. And nobody knew what half of them did because they ran, and then whoever wrote them left or died, And getting off Lotus Notes was something I looked at, knew was never going to happen. I know that IBM brought out a web version of Lotus Notes to try and make it look palatable somewhere around 2006. Heading to that place, citizen developers, vibe coding, even I've done it, Klein and Bolt, and started building my own application, which I thought was just like, if anybody hasn't done it, go do it. It's just watch Klein do unit testing and tear it down and write code and then build it back up. It's like right out of the movies. Yeah, it's going to cause some real interesting issues for security because people will be automating their work. So they're not going to be outsourcing it to somebody in India without telling the rest of the organization that they've done it.
Or North Korea,
it's going to be a lot
which is very popular.
Or North Korea, yeah. They're not calling somebody up on Fiverr and saying, hey, here's what I need you to do. They're going to tell Claude or GPT or Gemini, here's what I need you to do. And they're going to automate. Now, if they can automate the work, good for them. Find another role for them in the organization and start, and that's where I think we have to engage people that are jumping in on these things and finding these innovative solutions that are being used with the tools. So that way you've got the right people. Because, when going back on mainframes, when mainframes came in, everybody started complaining, oh, I'm going to lose my job. And they didn't. They simply found a new way to do their job. Same with PCs, same with SaaS, AI, people are going to lose their jobs. Like we're seeing unicorns that have one employee, the $1 billion valuation with one employee. It's going to happen. It's going to be bigger. You're going to be able to do more. You'll be able to automate as much as possible and then outsource other pieces. So you want to find the people that are embracing that and make sure that they are held in your company in high regard and taught more about the business maybe to help see where their intuition on how to use these tools fits with the business.
That is interesting. And also related to another area that I wanted to talk to you about, which is identity management, because a lot of our security techniques revolve around some kind of identity management, either a person or a service. But now with the agentic AI, it's becoming really interesting. What is identity? So I would like to hear your thoughts in that area as well. Think
Sure.
about the Turing test. Now we're hearing about the reverse Turing test where something needs to prove that they're not a human. So very, very interesting.
Yeah. I have, so for years, and this is going back to probably 2018, I have been trying to figure out, mostly because I spent 5 years at Zscaler, talking to customers, talking to the public about all the amazing tools they had. They had phenomenal tools that allowed people to work from anywhere. I used to use a pandemic as an example because I did pandemic planning back in corporate life. I had no idea it would get proven true. But my big issue, the thing that I struggled with was everything that we talked about started with, hand me a SAML token and I will. And then at that point, I will apply the right policies. I'll do DLP. I will sandbox, malware. I will do controlled access. All these wonderful things happened after you handed me a SAML token. And that was because I needed to know who you were. But we still have no way to prove, and this is what deep fakes are showing us. We have no way to prove who's on the other end of this. Like, you're taking a fairly decent risk in accepting that I really am me, that I do look like I am, because Paolo and I have met in real life. So you can go, yeah, that looks like him, but he was wearing glasses last time, I think. And there's no way to match the meat sack to the digital footprint. Like, that's still not being done very well. And you've got like Altman out there. He's got his world company doing retinal scans to prove that you're human. I still don't know if they do legal ID, whether they actually prove, yeah, it's Bil Harmer, or whether it's, no, this digital ID is a human being. And that's the only piece. But we've got to get to the point where we can say this is digital Bill attached to real life Bill. And I think the biggest reason that we haven't gotten to this yet is because to truly achieve it, you lose privacy, right? Because the second you step onto the internet, second you step out there, there's a digital trail. Like, I can walk out my front door today, and as soon as I get away from my Google camera, I could just disappear. And that is my right as an individual to simply disappear. My wife would be a little upset, I hope, but that is my right. On the internet, you can't disappear. So how do you deal with freedom fighters? How do you deal with journalists? How do you deal with people who have been abused and need help? Those kinds of things. And that piece has to be worked out. We've got to figure that out. But we need to figure out the other piece really fast, because then we need to be able to separate digital Bill from digital Bill's AI.
Or virtual Bill.
Exactly. Because to me, these things we should lose the apps on them. Like, apps are there for one reason and one reason only, to do stuff, right? Log into your bank account, post a picture on Instagram, read the news, whatever. And eventually I think it will simply be an AI that does those things for me. And it would be, hey, my AI, my digital Bill, go pay my bill, book me a 2 seats at a restaurant at 7:30. You know my preferences because you are the digital me. So go find stuff and get me the news headlines. And then there would be a reader window to read the news headlines. Because it's doing those things, it's paying the bill, it might be withdrawing money, transferring, booking tickets on a plane or something. There has to be a way to authenticate it and to authenticate it to me, right? So there's got to be the physical bill, the digital bill, then the digital assistant bill, or maybe the digital fingerprint bill becomes the same. I'm not sure. Because I go do stuff myself, I get on one of these and I talk, you need to authenticate who I am and prove that it truly is me, like right from microphone to your ears. How do you know that this is really me? And then on top of that, if I have an assistant, if I have a digital version of me going out doing things on my behalf as a proxy or as an assistant, whatever, how do you vet that and make sure that that one is included? That is the key to unlocking all of this, because there will be no trust. You can't trust anything. You can just verify, and we need to have really strong verification methodologies and complete non-repudiation when transactions get done.
There is kind of a second layer, which makes it even more complicated because, yes, let's say we know that it's your digital avatar doing those kind of things. We can link the digital avatar to you, but also we have to make sure that you give those instructions to the avatar. It's authorized by you to do those kind of things. And
Correct.
that creates another layer of complexity.
Yep. And that's the transactional, right? So that goes back to like when we look at identity and we look at authorization, I go log in and then maybe, I want to change something. I'll check and make sure it's really you. Or I'm going to do a wire transfer. Oh, I'm going to check and make sure it's really you. No, every time I click on something, you should be checking to make sure it's really me. That we are at that point in life that every transaction, in fact, even if I'm not doing a transaction, you may want to check and see if it's still me.
Yeah, but you're authorized to have access to that information.
Exactly.
Yeah. Paul, you wanted to ask a question.
I was reading an article a couple of days ago about Google's Veo 3. I don't know if you're familiar with that, Bill.
No.
So it's essentially what Google does to generate videos and deep fakes, so to speak. They're not going to outwardly admit to that, but that's one tool to generate that. And the way I think about it, to differentiate digital bill from, let's say, the real bill, right, is to build a profile around it. Like, who is the real bill versus the digital bill? And then take the concept of user behavioral analytics, right? So if there's a deviation from who the real bill is, then maybe we should question that, and that might be a digital bill. So do you think there's going to be a lot of, in terms of identity and access management for AI, is there going to be like a direction toward that? Are you aware of any nowadays?
I'm not aware of anything going that direction, but yeah, I believe that is the direction we're going to end up going. It's going to be on the nuanced characteristics of actions and interactions with systems to understand what's happening. We've had those in security for a long time on grander scales, like the improbable travel, or what we always called the Superman effect, right? I was here, I logged into my system here in San Francisco, and within 8 minutes, I logged in from Russia. Improbable travel. It's the second one's probably not Bill. Potential was the first one wasn't Bill. And then we started to see some systems that got a little bit better where they would look at a person's calendar and they would go through their email and go, okay, well, he did book flights to Russia. It's on his calendar to be in Russia. The flight left on time. We don't know whether he was on board or not because we don't have access to that information. But we did see an Instagram post from, St. Petersburg or something. So, okay. So maybe the one from home wasn't the real one, and you can start to refine your findings based on those the more data. And I think that's where identity management and AI come together really, really well, because imagine simply a password reset request, right? That's the most expensive thing that we have in our arsenal is the password reset request. And it is still, to this day, the single largest ticketed item on most enterprise IT organizations' sheets. I can't believe it is, but it is. Now, if you could actually do proper vetting of the user on the other end to avoid fakes, like not even deep fakes, just regular good old fashioned fakes, and you could do that in real time and then reset the password, that would be phenomenal. Like, I think MGM would be really excited to have something like that. right? Because you don't want somebody calling up and saying, hey, I don't know, the administrator for Okta. I need to reset my password. And could you blow out all the keys at the same time?
Get rid of the passwords altogether.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. We have to get rid of passwords. Passwords are just an absolute waste. If anybody at Microsoft is listening, please get rid of passwords. If you get rid of it, everybody else will. Everybody seems to be waiting on Microsoft to do it. But yeah, get rid of passwords and let's start doing proper authentication.
Bill, this has been very fascinating. And I think we were talking about AI is going to replace some people, some jobs, but I think we identified at least 3 or 4 new jobs that people can start thinking about. So yeah, it's not all waste. Any closing thoughts, anything that you would like to share on that topic?
I'm super excited for what's coming. The stuff I'm seeing out there today, some of the protection models that are coming up to protect privacy and protect data inside models, inside the LLMs. There's some really exciting stuff going on there. I think we need to do basic housekeeping. Look at your encryption. Get rid of old deprecated encryption. If anybody's still using TLS 1.1, 1.2, get rid of them, please. We're seeing supercomputers come online in China that have theoretically enough accuracy to break RSA and ECC encryption. So yeah, I would say take care of the housekeeping, but start prepping your organizations not only for the true advent of AI being utilized internally, but also quantum computing as well, because we are not that far away from it.
So Bill, do you think that there are any tools or methodologies that we can use to do a risk assessment of the organization from a quantum computing perspective, like to identify risks, that technology that is going to be disrupted severely by introducing quantum computing?
First and foremost, look at encryption. If you go back and think about hack now, decrypt later, industry-wide, we've been saying this has been going on for 10 years, but you could go all the way back to 2010 when there was an accidental BGP update that routed 15% of the world's traffic through China. And did they keep copies of it and are now trying to decrypt it and have been brute forcing it for the last 15 years? Who knows? What companies need to do is they need to look at their data. And this is the thing. Inventory is not sexy. It's absolutely necessary. So you need to understand all of your data, what's important, what is critical, start ranking it, and take the long tail data, the stuff that doesn't change, biometrics, personal information, health information, intellectual property, and start really protecting those with higher encryptions, something like RSA 256. It's more expensive for the encryption decryption. There's heavier latency, et cetera, but don't do everything. Like, don't just blanket paint the world with it. Find what's important, protect that with the higher grades, and start stepping into this. Encryption is the big one. That's the big one in our world where quantum computing can do some serious damage. And I think as we go through, we'll start to find more areas that will get disrupted. And that'll, I think, be more on, well, if you look at something like quantum ransomware, theoretically unbreakable. So we're going to see those come up, but that's, I think, a little bit further in the future because quantum computers are still pretty rare and expensive. But yeah, I would look at my encryption and making sure that I'm building out a strategy to stage myself into any of the 4 that NIST has put out, whether it's Sphinx Plus. Sphinx Plus is an interesting one because it's mathematically different from all the others. So Sphinx Plus should be everybody's backup. It's slower, it's heavier, but it's completely different mathematically. And then Crystal Kyber or one of the other ones, bringing those in and start adopting new encryption, because it's going to take years to do this. Like, people cannot flip encryptions next week. So start planning it out and understanding what is my 5-year plan on migrating encryption methodologies.
So it could be a very interesting AI project to identify where your data is and which to encrypt and how to encrypt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Bill. Thank you, Paolo. This was a really good conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone.